My soon-to-be ex-husband humiliated me on our wedding day and met his karma instantly. It has been 2 days since my wedding day. I had already been with him for 4 years, 1 year of which I was engaged. It all started a few months earlier when I noticed my husband Jake watching prank videos. Among other things, these videos showed embarrassing photos of the bride being played on a projector in front of the whole room, or the bride's face being smashed into the cake. I told him straight away that I didn't want anything like that at our wedding. He just laughed and said that he wasn't planning anything like that. I thought that was the end of it, but I kept catching him making strange arrangements with his friends. He suddenly wanted to choose the wedding photographer and the cake. I thought nothing of it, and was just glad that he was helping me with the wedding preparations. Nevertheless, I reminded him the day before that if he did something like that, I would break up with him immediately. When the day of the wedding came, everything went smoothly until the ceremony, until the moment came when the cake was to be cut. The whole room watched as I made the first cut, and the photographer stood in front of us with camera in hand. Suddenly, I felt a hand on the back of my head pushing me face first into the cake. Not only my makeup, but the whole wedding dress was ruined, and the whole room laughed, my husband the loudest. At that moment, the photographer took the photo, and Jake said that this was now our wedding photo. I turned around, slapped him in the face, and ran out of the room in tears. Thank God karma didn't take long to arrive and came in the form of his own brother. I ran to the toilet and started crying when I suddenly heard loud shouting from the hall. It was his brother Frank. I could barely understand what he was saying, and when I left the toilet, he was waiting for me. He told me that Jake had something to tell me. Jake was shaking and apologized without looking me in the eye. Frank told him to look me in the eye and apologize again. Even I was a bit scared of Frank at that moment because I had always thought of him as a kind and gentle man. I had never seen him angry before. Jake apologized again, and then Frank led us back into the hall, which was suddenly very quiet, and most of our families looked down at the floor a little embarrassed. The festivities were cut short, and I was taken home by Frank because I was too angry with my husband, and I didn't want to see him. During the ride, Fran apologized for blowing up like that. He explained that my husband was horrible, even back when he was a brother, and used every special occasion to humiliate Frank. When it was Frank's birthday, my husband would throw his cake at him and break his presents. But back then, their parents always brushed it all off by saying that that's just how brothers behave. So he had to endure every humiliation. But when he saw my husband bury my face in the cake, he was fed up because he realized that my husband was just a bad person who got his satisfaction from humiliating others. I asked Frank if he thought it would be an exaggeration if I separated from my husband, and he said no, because according to him, I deserved better, and he didn't care how his brother felt about it because he had brought it on himself. Then he told me that if I needed help collecting my things, he would help me, and gave me his number. And I decided to separate from him and file for divorce and informed Jake and my family about it. Jake just told me not to do that because it was just a harmless prank. I was spammed by both his family and mine that it would be ridiculous to end our marriage over this. But I see it differently. If he does something like this to me despite multiple requests not to do it even after promising he wouldn't do it, then I can't trust him. No matter what he promises me, I have to assume that the opposite can and will happen, and that he doesn't care at all how I feel about his decisions. This situation can be projected onto so many much worse situations where it would be important for me to be able to trust him. His brother Frank seems to be the only one who supports me now, and I will go through with the divorce. Call me humorless, call me what you want, but I have given my reasons.
I expect my fiancé to keep his promise about changing jobs since I got pregnant. We've been together since 2010. He's 41M and I'm 35F. My fiancé is a fire captain, and he's in charge of about 12 people. The way he describes it, they're basically all brothers, and he's the big brother. I also work as a nurse. Back in August of 2022, he was seriously injured at work, and I had to spend 2 months full-time caretaking for him, taking leave from work in order to make sure he was fine. Thankfully, he made a full recovery. After this, we had a serious discussion about his future, and how since we're planning to get married and have kids, I want to have them very soon, this really worried me. It turned into a major rift, but he ended up promising to eventually phase into an administration role as he got older. The timeline we agreed on was in the next 5 years. About 6 months ago, there was another terrible accident at work, and one of his subordinates died on the job. Apparently, this is the third fire in buildings built by the same company, so the city launched an investigation into falsifying inspections. At the time, everyone was in deep mourning, including me since I've met his colleagues a lot and even cooked for him. It hit everyone hard, but it hit my fiancé especially hard because he thought he was responsible for the kid's death. He was only 22 years old. It's now 6 months later. I'm 7 months pregnant, and my fiancé ended up being offered a promotion to battalion chief, which means he'd be out of physically first responding. It's basically a dream job for my POV. But he told me that he's going to turn it down. Not only that, but there's an ongoing lawsuit and he's volunteered to testify in court, which could be an extremely lengthy battle. I reminded him of his promise, and he told me that he could no longer keep it after his subordinate's death. He said basically, "I'm going to stick by my brothers till the end. I can't let Lee die in vain." Obviously, I was extremely upset. We have a baby on the way, and here he is going back on his word, but continuing to put himself in danger. Now, not only physically, but also legally. It feels to me like he prioritizes his bond with his colleagues more than me. I think what scares me is his reaction to Lee's death. Lee was only with the team for 3 years and doesn't even speak fluent English. But when he died, the entire team was sobbing their eyes out. And it's the only time I've ever seen him so much as shed a tear in sadness. He was ugly crying. We haven't gotten anyone else involved other than me asking my mother for advice, who told me to give him some time, but she ultimately agreed he should keep his promise. We've talked a few more times, but we're at an impasse, and with my late pregnancy, I'm more stressed out than ever, and am deathly afraid of hurting the baby. To his credit, he's still been acting the part of a good fiancé, taking care of me during pregnancy, but the spark in his eyes when he sees me dimmed after Lee's death, and seems like it's completely gone out since we had that blow-up fight a week ago. I get that he's processing grief, but we have our entire future to worry about, and I frankly think 6 months is enough time for you to go back to prioritizing your real family. Am I the asshole? This is time sensitive, obviously. I'm due in March, and he can't keep the job offer floating forever if he hasn't turned it down yet.